Welcome back to another episode of the React Native Radio Podcast. Episode 327, Automating App Releases with Pratul Kalia.
Hey everyone, I'm Jamon, she's Robin, he's Mazen, and we are React Native Radio. Today we have Pratul Kalia from Tramline as our guest. And I swear, we just had the most fun following him around his WeWork, which is completely empty right now. It's like late at night where he is. And he was trying to find a better place to record. How many steps did you get in? I'm pretty sure you could like close some rings or something. This should count as an exercise session.
It should count as an exercise session.
I feel like it is.
But we got to see WeWork India headquarters, which
by the way, it looks amazing.
It looks amazing.
Cool.
You said there's a gym there and everything. Like you're dialed. I've never been in a WeWork, so I don't know. I think there's one in Portland, but not where I am. I'm probably half hour away from it. All right. Well, we're going to get into this pretty quickly, but before we get into that, let's talk about our sponsor, Infinite Red. We are a premier React Native consultancy located fully remote in the US. We're a team of, I think, around 30. We're actually maybe a little bit more now. It's only 30. It's not like we have 300. I should know the number, right? Is it 31? I think it's 31. Anyway, we're all senior React Native developers. We have a few support staff, but mostly developers, and have been doing this for almost a decade right now. If you're looking for React Native expertise for your next project, hit us up at infinite.red/radio. And don't forget to mention that you heard about us through this podcast, so us three continue to have jobs. All right, let's continue into our topic for today. And what we're going to be talking about is, really all around the app release cycle and automating and CI, CD, and all the fun stuff that developers, of course, would generally prefer not to think about too much in the course of building their apps, I think. But we do have to deal with it. And so the easier we can make it, the better. So welcome. I really appreciate you coming on, Pratul.
Thanks a lot. This is, it has already been a lot of fun in the past 15 minutes. We should have recorded that.
I know, we should have been recording, right? Our audience will just have to imagine it. All right, so you're one of the founders of Tramline.
That is correct.
Tell us the story of how you founded it and give us sort of a behind the scenes look of how that all came together, and especially any stories that you haven't shared elsewhere. We'd love to hear anything.
Absolutely. So in the morning, I was actually going through the earliest documentation that I could find around Tramline and stuff that I had shared with friends and colleagues and things like that. And I found a keynote presentation. Thank you, iCloud. I found a keynote presentation from 2018, end 2018, early 2019. And in that presentation, I have sort of spoken about a vast centralized release management operating system that is, well, now after many years of trying to grow Tramline and building Tramline and selling Tramline, reads like a over-enthusiastic bad idea. But oh my God, even if I had all the budget in the world, I probably could not produce that software. And if I somehow managed to produce it, no one would buy it ever. But yeah, so 2018 is where at least I saw evidence. I have evidence for that, which is nice. But the reason this happened is because before Tramline, I also ran an agency, just like Infinite Red, for about close to 10 years. And in the due course of running the agency, and as the mobile market grew explosively in India, Southeast Asia, it gave me and my team and my colleagues, and of course, the mobile ecosystem around us, as it grew, it gave us a lot of perspective on what 0 to 1 for apps looks like, which all of us were learning at that point. But as the ecosystem grew and as we got serious mobile-first businesses in this part of the world as well, where mobile is massive, right? I mean, it's a huge penetration numbers across most of, especially East Asia, Southeast Asia, everywhere here. I sort of over the years, I got this sense that, okay, it's fine to do 0 to 1, but now everyone's doing the 1 to 100 or like the 1 to 10. And the same app teams at these really mature companies doing e-commerce and logistics and food delivery and ride hailing and things like that. All of these large companies, their app teams have access to much worse tooling than their backend teams and front-end teams. It was quite obvious. It was also obvious because all of my friends who used to write any sort of backend or web front-end code, they just had a different class of problems altogether in comparison to us app folks. And so I remember being really excited when Bitrise happened. I was very early. I discovered Bitrise really early, I think 2016, I want to say. And I was really glad someone was doing CI just for app teams because it was such a huge pain to install the app toolchain and things like that. But those initial years, I think it's around that time when I had this sense that, okay, the landscape for a lot of the mobile tooling will look different. We will have to rethink some of these ideas that are well established in the backend and front end world for the past 20, 25 years. All of the DevOps ideas, 12-factor applications, all of this stuff that it's considered to be great engineering practices needs to be rethought. And that's sort of somewhere led to Tramline, me just thinking about those things.
I love that. Obviously having a big idea to shoot for and then kind of refining it down to something that actually makes sense, that you can actually build into a real company. That's huge. I can't say that I ever had for Infinite Red, at least in the early days, the same like massive vision. Well, my previous consultancy, which I ran for 10 years, I certainly didn't. I just needed a job in tech and I was the only one who would hire myself. So that was how that happened. But yeah, I mean, Infinite Red obviously does have more of a vision. Little plug. If you go to building.infinite.red, you'll actually hear our podcast about that. Yeah, the big ideas are what to shoot for, and then you kind of refine as you go. It's interesting though, because like you built this app that was centered around, this service that's centered around mobile, and I remember, and I don't hear it quite as much anymore, but especially when you would have been kind of starting this venture, I kept hearing mobile's dead, like mobile. Yeah. Apps, like nobody's going to download. It's all PWAs. It's all mobile web. Like you're not going to need. Why would you build an app? But you were betting on mobile.
What year are you referring to here?
Well, I remember it being the most strong, probably 2015 to 2018, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. That was just kind of my perception.
No, actually, you're right, because my guess is that you're looking at it, your lens was a North American lens. And of course, the mobile became big in the US and I guess in Western Europe as well. I want to say 5 years before it happened in Southeast Asia, India. And so there is a bit of a lag, and it took us perhaps a couple of more years before things became big here. But of course, the big apps in this part of the world are really, really big because, of course, the usage numbers are insane. And so the usage numbers are way higher, which means that the software engineering is just so much harder because we see a very different kind of scale here.
You have to scale like instantly. It's like... Yeah, you release it and you're immediately at scale. So yeah, you have to get there quickly.
Yeah, this isn't. I should do a quick segue here. I actually spoke to someone day before yesterday, and they're going to launch a something like a meditation app in about 2 days' time, and they have a huge campaign, huge marketing campaign that has been building up to this. And the reason they were talking to me is because someone recommended that they just check with me once, get some advice on launch day practices and stuff like that, because they're expecting 100 million signups on first day. And 100 million signups.
How realistic is this? I've heard people
It
talk
is-
about these numbers and then they get like 300.
It is reasonably realistic
He's going to do it? Okay. Oh, man.
because this is not going to be just here in India. They are going to target an audience. They're going to target an audience, I guess, of Indians, but they're all over the place. So it's not just people from
Yeah.
India. They're going to be people from across the world, but they are reasonably confident.
What do you tell someone like that? Like, I would be like, well, don't do that. Like, start with like one country, you know, like that's insane. Like, you're
Yeah.
not gonna, it's gonna,
Yeah.
that's gonna be so stressful.
Absolutely. I told them don't use Firebase authentication. Firebase authentication. I mean, come on.
Oh, no.
None of these free services, because they in their load testing, that was one of the reasons they were talking to me, because they did some load testing and they realized, hey, Firebase, we're hitting rate limits. And I was like, you're hitting Firebase rate limits? That's odd. What numbers are you looking at? And we're like, well, 1 million signups in a minute, and then a million every minute.
That feels not, that doesn't feel like a good idea.
Yeah.
I think I kind of want to add something to what Pratul just said. So we said 100 million signups in the first day. I think from my background, I think I mentioned on the podcast, grew up in Nigeria, families Lebanese and Middle Eastern. A lot of the Lebanese population does not live in Lebanon. So, for example, Brazil has like 5 times, I believe, the number could be completely off, but way more than the population in Lebanon. Every entrepreneur that I know from any Middle Eastern country has never targeted their country. They've targeted the diaspora. And the diaspora is always so much larger than the country itself. Specifically, so like Lebanon, there's one guy that I'm mentoring right now out of Palestine that's also trying to target Lebanon and Palestine. And that's just a huge number of users outside of those two countries. So that is kind of the lens of, I feel like, Middle East and then Far East, where it's like, let's just target our entire people. And most of our people aren't in one spot, which, in the US, you're like, oh, let's target American market, just the US. And, you focus on smaller subsets of it. So I kind of see where you're going with that.
Absolutely.
I know that like Blue Sky, when they launched, they had an invite system. That can work as well because you sort of have like a natural cap. You're like, okay, everybody gets a certain number of invites, but then their invites get fewer and their invites get fewer. And you can kind of like then roll out invites a little bit more as time goes on, and they become a little bit more like sought after if it's a good thing and people are evangelizing each other. Like, you should get on here. Okay, do you have an invite?
It's a really smart way to do a social media platform too, which is completely dependent on you having your network
right. That's
on
true.
the site.
You don't want random people. You want your friends.
Right. You want your friends. So like having invite codes makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked here. We need to talk a little more about, I mean, certainly if you're going out there and you're going to be rolling something out, you need to have CI. You need to have really easy deployments. You need to have really easy ability to kind of validate everything before you send it out into the world. And that's really where Tramline is and why you're on here. We want to talk about the topic in general, but I think Tramline's a good example of how to do this.
That was a great segue, Jamon, I gotta say.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for setting me up on that. But the obvious elephant in the room is when it comes to React Native, which we are, is Expo, right? You mentioned Bitrise earlier, but I kind of want to bring it back to how does Tramline stack up against Expo, EAS service? Whenever we talk to a client, the first thing's like, oh yeah, let's use Expo application services for our entire pipeline. How do you all stack up against them? And, what is the advantage from your perspective?
So I want to start out by, I should say this because I'm a huge fan of Expo. I think oh my God, just the quality of the tooling and the documentation and the community and the difficulty level of what they've pulled off is mind-boggling to me. And I love that. I mean, I love a good platform. We have stolen some ideas from Expo. But that being said, I think Expo and Tramline are, at the moment, they're targeting different ends, or I should say different sides of the market. Tramline does have a bunch of customers that use React Native applications. And so we do have some things that are special for cross-platform applications. We, of course, from our perspective, as a release platform, React Native and Flutter look the same because they're both being deployed to the Android store.
Right. By the time you get to Tramline, it doesn't really matter how they were built. You're talking about
exactly
an executable that's going to run on an iPhone or an Android phone.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I might ask the editors to just edit the React Native and Flutter look the same. Sorry.
Flutter is the F word on this podcast.
Yeah. Why am I not surprised?
I don't think I've heard that.
That's
funny.
That's a good line. That's a good line.
That is a good line.
Yeah. So I think what Expo does really well is do the job for most of I would say the small, medium-sized market. I think the place where we've seen Expo become tricky to use is because for larger customers or for enterprise customers, they already have significant investments in their own CI pipelines. They often cannot or do not want to foot the bill of what Expo would cost at their scale. And I think that's fair. I mean, it is expensive for large companies, I guess. And I have heard this from people. But I guess from Tramline's perspective, our tooling is designed as a result of our own experiences of working on large-scale applications. So a lot of the things that Tramline has is for large teams, to the point that I think for a small team, Tramline is almost overkill. When actually, if I look at Expo, I think it's great for starting off just from day zero itself, because right from the very first step where you create Expo app, all the way to, of course, EAS build, which requires you to not write any CI pipelines. Now, you don't need to get your hands dirty with GitHub Actions or Bitrise, all the way to submitting it to the store. It is including, doing the annoying bits like managing key store and certificates and stuff. I think that's fabulous. I think that's great. It's such a phenomenal first-time experience that both Apple and Google have failed to provide their communities. I think Expo is doing the best job out there. But yeah, of course, on the contrary, what Tramline does really well is that, okay, I have a team, I have an app. This app is a decade old. We have huge investments in GitLab CI or Bitrise. We of course send builds to App Store and Play Store, but we also send them to Firebase app testing. We deploy a copy of our build to S3, and then we notify these people in Slack here, and these groups here get this notification. So usually for us, the ideal cross-platform use case for Tramline is a more mature customer, a bigger customer.
I could see that. I see that with our clients sometimes too, where when, I was talking earlier, working with mentoring some people and getting them started, Expo and EAS pipeline is great because it's quick, easy, and like you mentioned, good documentation. And for the beginners who don't want to go through the complexity of key stores and certificates and, UUIDs and all that crazy stuff, that's the best path. But then when you get to the larger enterprise, who, for the most part, have a large security team that do handle that stuff, EAS might be a barrier to entry for them, because it's like, well, my security team needs to go through this process for us to make sure that, we're good to go to the market. So that's great advice there.
I have a question for you, Pratul.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who's more annoying to work with, Google Play Store or Apple App Store?
Oh my God. My CTO should have been here. I would say the App Store, because their APIs are, in our experience, their APIs are more flaky.
Yes.
It is.
I've heard this before.
Impressive how often Apple's APIs are down, given the number of zeros in their balance sheet.
Right?
Right.
Yes.
I've always said they're really good at like on-device, certainly hardware.
Yeah,
and
of
then,
course.
Some types of on-device software. Although that's getting less.
They have ones that they randomly neglect and are really bad.
QuickTime. Yeah. We were just talking about that. But also, then anything to do with the internet, they just don't seem to be very good at.
I would love to know the story behind Apple Invites. I have no idea how that has happened. It just was so out of the blue.
Apple Invites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
They
What
like
is this?
just released this. It's like a replacement for like Evite, like so you can like send invitations to events to your like iMessage contacts.
Have you used Paperless Post or
No.
Partyful guys. I love them.
Party?
No, we always use Evite for my kids' parties and
It
stuff.
literally, it's funny you say that, Pratul. We sent out Paperless Post invites for my son's birthday party, which is this weekend. And literally the next day they come out with it. And I'm like, well, where was this yesterday? I could have used this. Thank
I
you.
literally texted my kids' friends' parents like one at a time.
Does everybody have to have an Apple device, or how does this work?
It works even without an Apple device. You do need an iCloud account, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Oh, I
so.
see.
But it's just odd. Like, it made me think, what was happening? Who decided
Yeah, right.
that we want an
They're like, this is
invitation
the app we need.
for parties?
Hey, they needed to have an internal party. They didn't have an app for it. They built
Yeah.
it, and the Apple Pizza party happened.
Yeah.
You know what? That's actually how I build all my like small apps that I release. I'm like, I need something. I do a quick Google search. It doesn't exist. And then I have Cursor build it for me. All right. So I actually want to ask you about Reldex, because I saw that on your website, and it seems like an interesting thing. You have this metric. It's RELDEX. It's a metric for release efficiency. And I think it comes from some other like index that is out there. So how'd you come up with this concept? How do you like, you know, what other like similar scoring systems are there? How does that even work?
So you're right about it coming from a different place. The inspiration for the name comes from Apdex, which is Application Performance Index. I believe New Relic came up with Apdex the first. They were the first ones.
It's a Portland area company.
Oh, sweet. And what Apdex is popular for is to be able to look at the user experience, or how effectively is the user experiencing our app? Are they able to use the app, and are the latencies fine, and things like that. So it was like from New Relic's perspective as a monitoring platform, it was a single number that let teams understand that, okay, our Apdex is 0.9. It's sorry, just to clarify for those who don't know, Apdex goes from, I believe, 0 to 1. That's the range for Apdex. It boils down to 0 to 1. It's just a single number. So it makes it really easy to know that, hey, my users are experiencing the application well. Our latencies are good, our throughputs are good, our APIs are performing well, etc. Now, of course, the users could be unhappy with a well-performing application, which Apdex does not concern itself with. So similar to this, this is the idea for Reldex. I believe the initial idea came from one of our customers who had a score similar to this, but my co-founder Akshay, he fleshed this out, and he was the one who took the inspiration from Apdex. So what Reldex does is, in a very similarly inspired way, gives you a score from between 0 to 1 to measure how well do we do releases. Are we doing releases well? So we take a bunch of things into account when we calculate the score. We look at how long did you take, or how long are you taking to do releases? How many fixes on your release branch is it taking to get to production? How many builds are you making inside a specific release cycle? Did you do, I believe one of the metrics is, one of the scores that goes into it is, did you do how many production releases did you have to do before you close this release cycle? So like, you release the app till 20% and then you realize something was broken and you had to swap it out at 20% with a new build. So that reduces your Reldex score, which gives teams, and especially from our experience now, I can say this, engineering managers, a lot of folks from the platform teams, especially at big companies, they look at the score and they're able to see that, okay, hey, you know what, we're doing fine. We're kind of in the green. Or that, hey, those 2 releases were really bad because we had a game-breaking bug and we had to do 4 fixes or whatever. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you avoid sort of being in that, you know, how there's you start measuring something and then people start optimizing for the thing you're measuring, and then they kind of like lose sight of the end goal, and everything's green, but people are unhappy, you know?
Yeah.
Like how do you avoid that?
So one of the ways we avoid that is we try to not be prescriptive about RELDEX. So when someone onboards Tramline and they're going through the trial, we make it very clear to them that, listen, this is a number to define, which is an indicator of your process. And we have some defaults, but what you want is to look at the defaults and match it to how your team, how your domain, how your business actually does in the real world. Because it's possible that if you're a 10-person team building a podcasting app, perhaps doing 0 hotfixes is our benchmark, and even 1 is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine that if I was, I don't know, WhatsApp or Uber, at that scale, the probability that something would go wrong and would require me to swap a build in production seems it would probably be higher. So at that point, I would probably increase my thresholds there. So we like to look at it as a check engine light, right? It's not an answer. It is an indicator that, hey, something's up, but now you should look at the light, figure out that something is up, and now you investigate why is something up? Where are we going wrong?
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's much less a like, let's optimize for this thing, and more. Yeah. I like the check engine light. That's a good idea.
It's like, it might be your gas cap, or your engine might need to be rebuilt. You don't know.
Yeah.
Correct.
I've had both of those happen on the same vehicle. So earlier you mentioned you do some cool stuff with the cross-platform, like React Native, Flutter, etc. And I saw a little bit in your docs about things like synchronizing the 2 releases. You can kind of see them like side by side and things like that. But can you talk to me a little bit more detail about what do you do for React Native and like other cross-platform apps?
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you looked at the documentation, because that synchronized things is for sure one of the really fun things. I enjoy that a lot. Teams really like that, because that's something that they do in their heads, and they've never really seen it on a dashboard.
I know it's so cool, because you literally see it side by, like on your screen, you see them side by side, kind of almost like they're racing, racing toward the end.
Yeah. So that is actually how teams use it. So they don't use it as a race, but okay. One step back. Synchronized cross-platform releases from Tramline's perspective is very, very straightforward from the outside. From the outside, all it does is make it clear that your code base is the same. You're using a cross-platform framework for your iPhone app and your Android app, and everything's the same. So the only thing that's actually different is how they reach the end user. Of course, your same React Native app will reach your Android user differently from, of course, how it reaches the iPhone user. But also, they're tested differently. So, for instance, of course, some teams use open beta on the Play console. Some of them will use Firebase. Some of them will just dump Android builds in Slack. Quite a common thing to do. But of course, on the iOS world...
That's so Android.
Yeah. On the iOS world, of course, we have test flight everywhere, and more test flight. So we just have a bunch of different groups. So what Tramline does, it lets you codify both your Android and iOS process separately, as it does for native apps. But then you get to run it together, which means that, of course, you can see them on the same screen, but you can also act on it at the same time. So as an example, if you land, let's say you notice a bug on the Android side of things, and your iOS build has already been approved by Apple Review. Now, we know that, and teams know this, that if you change your Apple build, your iOS build under review, sometimes it takes 12, 24 hours, 36 hours to get that review sign off from Apple again, right before it goes to production. So we have customers who will land a commit and then decide that, hey, you know what? This is a fix just on the Android side of things. I don't want to touch that iOS build that's been reviewed and is ready to go to production the second I click the button. So on Tramline, this neat little sort of widget shows up when you land a commit on your release branch and you're farther into the release, which just tells you that, hey, do you actually want us to retrigger your iOS CI? Because this, as you can see here, the review is already green. This is nearly just one click away from production. And so people will sometimes just apply the commit on one side, and then they will not trigger the build for iOS at all. And the reason I like to call this out is because this is annoyingly difficult to build inside CI, because you have to sit outside of CI. So a person has to do this usually, an engineering manager, or I guess in the case of bigger teams, someone from the platform team or a release manager has to do this or has to take this decision manually. With Tramline, it just becomes easier. It gets recorded in the system, and you just have this cute little pathway that shows up. Because at the end, once the commit is in your repo, anyway, it doesn't matter. The next release, it'll go to iOS anyway. So this is one of those examples of like stuff that we do on cross-platform stuff.
Yeah, it's super cool. There's a blog post about it when you released it. We'll link to that in the show notes. That has a cool screenshot of at least the state of it when you did that. And I don't know. I love this sort of stuff. Like these sort of dashboards are just so much fun. And I understand, like, in order to make a kind of like simple dashboard, it takes a tremendous amount of work.
Gosh,
on the back end.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's true. There's always complexity behind simplicity. I feel like I have to ask because it seems like every single product and service out there is starting to add this. But how are you leveraging AI, if at all? And like, how did you make that decision? And like, was it sort of like, oh, we got to get on this bandwagon, or how did that happen?
Yeah, people definitely. Yeah, that's a question we get asked often. Very little AI externally at the moment. We do have some ideas, I think, which are fairly sort of the first ideas that one would think of, especially around understanding reviews of a particular release, being able to, here is a dump of the 60 reviews I've received for this particular release that you're releasing.
We're like, oh, hey, we think there might be an issue.
Yeah.
We're seeing a trend in these.
Yeah,
that makes
that's
sense.
super
Sounds
good
like
use for it,
user sentiment.
Yeah.
Sentiment, not sediment. That would be a little
Sediment.
different.
Not user sediment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
if they're bad reviews,
Layers
we
of
can call
users.
them sediments.
Yes, exactly.
right? Not completely dissimilar.
No, I guess not.
Yeah, I mean, and we've been doing this stuff, right? We've done. I've heard of products do sentiment analysis for the App Store and Google Play reviews. It's just so much easier to do this with LLMs and the OpenAI and Gemini APIs. That's some of the easy stuff. We've definitely looked a little bit at agents and how would this new world where everyone's talking about agents and people are doing these things. I'm interested in seeing how that would, if there is something that I can do there to simplify a lot of the manual coordination, a lot of the manual work that goes into doing a confident app release. Not sure yet. No early signs yet.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's some opportunities there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to do it the right way for sure.
Right. You don't want to sort of like force it in
It's also a sensitive path.
Yeah.
just because it's what's hot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. But also from our perspective and from our customers' perspective, it is, app releases are sensitive. We know they are a single shot, very little room for failure here. Critical path in the organization's business.
Our clients are definitely the most anxious
Yes.
and stressed out and needy about app releases. And I get it. It's a big deal.
I don't think I don't think we want to take that responsibility lightly. We of course don't take that lightly, especially with stuff like AI, which can be hit or miss. But also that means our customers don't particularly care about the latest and greatest stuff happening on their app release dashboard. They just want confident, regular, high quality releases. That's what they want.
Yeah, I see it probably as being something that's simply more informational, where it just gives you more data, more targeted data in the right places.
Yeah.
Maybe more natural data where it can actually analyze multiple things at once and kind of give you a recap that then allows you to dig in deeper. It's sort of I guess, an augmentation to the Rail decks that you have. Well, we do need to wrap up, unfortunately, here. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate having you on here. I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we will wrap it up. So do you ever code yourself personally anymore? I know you were a software engineer back in the day.
Not on Tramline, actually.
They won't let you touch the code base. This is sort of like what happens with me.
No, I don't think it's that.
They don't.
I think more than that, I've built apps for so long that I think I would not be very productive at writing code on a complex workflow orchestration platform.
Right. Yeah, it's a very different type of coding.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you know, that perspective, coming from the app developer perspective, is huge, because if you came at it from a platform perspective, it's gonna leak through. We see this all the time where you'll have these like platform devs who build things that all of the things make sense based on the internals. But as you said, like, you do a bunch of back end work in order to make the front end look really friendly and simple, but that can't leak through. It can't be like all of the internals, like, you know, just coming at you.
Yeah.
You're basically you bring a user perspective to the product development.
Huge sense.
I'm the one who's suffered.
Like, you're not building it, you're the audience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I am tempted though to write code because it is open source, and I do feel I feel that often. That, hey, you know, I want to do something here, because I see it. It's so easy to see what's happening, and people talk about that stuff. That, hey, we saw you're working this thing.
Yeah, totally. More useful, I think, would be if you had a little side project that's an app and you're using Tramline to deploy it.
We do,
because then you're going to start feeling the pain, and you're going to come in and be like, why does it work like this? This is stupid. You know, like I'm getting really annoyed by it.
Absolutely.
It's exactly what Jamon does to our open source project.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Totally.
We do actually have a small app that we use to dog food Tramline that's also open source, and it's super fun because all it does is list the stations of the Yamanote line in the Tokyo metro system, along with all the audio recordings from the station that you can play. But that's built in the other cross-platform thing.
Oh, the one that we're not allowed to talk about.
The
F word.
And yeah, so sorry, oops.
Yeah.
Well, as Jamon well knows, Flutter is better than React Native in all the ways that don't matter.
I wrote an article with that title.
I'm sure it's
Flutter's better
fun.
than
It's
React
very
Native
fun to write
in all the ways that don't matter. It's actually a fairly nuanced article. In some ways, it's probably more complimentary to Flutter than React Native developers would have liked me to be. I actually think there's a lot of good there, but that's a different episode. We did do an episode on that.
Several, I think.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. That was so much fun. I really appreciate having you on, Pratul. And where can people find you on, like, you know, social media and whatnot?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I guess we can leave a link to my profile in the show notes, and Twitter.
Perfect. And I think your Twitter handle is
PRXTL.
PRXTL.
That is correct.
Yeah, PRXTL. You can find us, of course, on Twitter. I'm at Jamon Holmgren. Mazen is at Mazen Chami, and Robin is at Robin Heinz with an E. No underscore anymore, though.
I got rid of the underscore right before I started using Blue Sky.
Yeah, now you're using Blue Sky.
Instead.
So you can find her
I'm
on
using
Blue
Blue
Sky
Sky.
as well. What is that? It's
just robinheinz. That's my
.dev,
URL,
yeah.
robinheinz.dev.
I'm on Blue Sky as well. I need to post there more often. Jamon.dev, and I don't know. Mazen, you on there?
Mazenchami.dev. Yep.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Really
also on Blue
straightforward.
Sky. Pratul.net.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that feature of Blue Sky.
Yeah.
It's
so
so
nice.
cool.
It is.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
As always, thanks to our editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editor, Jed Bartosky, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamon Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.